to if you plan on just visiting back for it, so.
Maybe I'll sit here. So we're not going to have a lot of
Demoted from your honor to commissioner.
That's all right.
Good seeing you.
You too. Thank you. Hello.
Oh, yes. Good. Give us that. Okay.
I suppose, yeah.
Good seeing you. How about you?
I do. Thank you.
It's fine.
So Pat, we have until the 31st, right?
The request, opportunity to request the hearing at the end of the day. Have you received any comments? No, not that I know. No, I think Joanne checked me about that. We'll have this on the right. Thank you. I didn't have a chance to just do that. Yeah, no, that's fine. I expect that you will. Let's see. You enjoying things?
Yeah, very much, yes. It's interesting, all the various facets, you know.
She keeps us on our toes, very, very good. Just saying.
I'm trying. That's why the governor really sent me here.
I know with all the grain elevator consultancies we've had, Commissioner Fetch has got that in her portfolio. And it's nice to have an extra set of eyes and all those things with her background.
Going on, I think it is next week on an actual exam of one of the grain elevators, because I've been to a national meeting and I've been to tour Blue Flint ethanol plants, and I'm going to go on an exam.
Is this one that's potentially
No, it's routine. I just want, you know, the industry tour and go with an inspector. And I'm doing that with all the various portfolios. I'm saving the western part for last, so I have more time.
Stay with me,
Oh, I try.
I was in Watford City the other day. It's amazing. 20,000 people.
Well, I remember the last time we were there, and the sound man couldn't make it because he was stuck in traffic. It was just hilarious.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
Cut, the one from city traffic jam.
Scott, let me know when we're ready to go. Ready to go? All right, good afternoon. This is Commissioner Brian Culp. We're meeting in the 12th floor of the Capitol today for actually 3 informal hearings. The first one will be on case number PU 10-218, the second one case number PU 10-554, and the third one PU 12-515. So the way we'll work it is we'll have first informal, we'll open it, go around the table, do what we got to do, then we'll close it, and we'll immediately open the second one, and so on down the way. With that, the first case is actually PU 10-218, Bakken Link Pipeline LLC. It's Commissioner Cramer's portfolio, so I'll open it up with any comments he might have, as well as Commissioner Fetch, and then perhaps go around the table and then give names for the record, and we'll go for the guidance Kevin would have.
All right, very good, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, glad to be to this point. As Commissioner Coates said, this is a Bakken Link siting case. We have cited this pipeline. These are just some amended routes, proposed amendments to the route, and I think this was a prudent course of action to do the notice of opportunity rather than go to a formal hearing. Of course, I think there's a public hearing until Friday.
31st.
31st. Okay, to request it formally, if they if they have a reason to do so, but to this point we've not heard any requests. So hopefully we can handle it in an informal way and move on. This is an important pipeline. We want to get this one built. I was, in fact, just the other day I was by the rail terminal at Freiburg, and it's looking pretty good. It's starting to look like it's ready to go. So I suspect they'd like to get a pipeline to it as well, and start moving more of that Bakken to market. So hopefully it'll go well.
Commissioner Fetch, any opening comments?
This is a big one, and I agree, I'm glad it's at this point, and let's move it along.
All right, perfect. If we could just go on the table to get who's all sitting here.
Sure. Patrick Font, Commission Staff.
Mark Gurman, Commission Staff.
James Todd, Bartlett West Engineer for Bakken Link Pipeline.
Steve Breiser, President, Bakken Link Pipeline.
Lawrence Bender, Frederickson and Byron, representing Bakken Link Pipeline in this matter.
All right, perfect. With that, we'll turn it over to the company and go ahead and open it up.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalk. Just a little bit of background. As Commissioner Cramer indicated, this matter was before the Commission previously. It was a hearing that took place in October of 2011. An order was entered by the Commission on February 29th of 2012. That order entered a corridor certificate as well as a route permit. The corridor certificate and the route permit were conditioned upon Bakken Link obtaining from SHPO a final concurrence letter. In July of 2012, Bakken Link filed a amended request for the corridor certificate and a route permit because of some minor route changes. We submitted at that time a letter as well as an affidavit from Mr. James Todd at Bartlett and West. We also submitted some maps that showed the various reroutes as well as an index map, and we also submitted an addendum to the cultural resource study that was done, that was prepared by Bartlett and West. And then finally we submitted at that time an amended wetland and water body crossings. Subsequent thereto, Commissioners, we on August 27th we submitted some additional documents, and it's a document that I referenced earlier, that the fact that the corridor certificate and the route permit were conditioned upon a final concurrence of SHPO. We did submit to the Commission the final concurrence with some attachments. The way I'd like to proceed, if there's no objection from the Commission, is I would just have James Todd with Bartlett and West take the maps that you have previously received, and then I passed out another set labeling them. It starts with an index map and then map 1 through 8, and probably just have him walk through very quickly the route changes and why we're asking for the route changes, if that's appropriate.
Sounds fine.
Okay. Jane, why don't we just start, I think the index map is on top. We can lay that to one side and then just go through the maps that are attached. And we don't have to go through it in great detail, but perhaps you can just spend a little time explaining why we're asking for the reroutes.
Sure. And as you'll notice, the maps are in order from kind of the south end at Freiburg Rail Facility moving north, just so we kind of have a reference there. But and on the first page, you'll notice that a lot of the route changes are very, very minor. You'll notice over where we call the Belfield receipt point, that adjustment was because of the fact that Whiting had run some pipelines across that same location. So our timing was kind of about the same as theirs, and they got their pipelines in first, so we needed to make an adjustment to the landowners obviously want us to butt up against their easement.
Sure.
The little jog that you see there is because there's a home, and because of the 500-foot requirement, there wasn't enough room to stay on the north side, so we had to kind of jog around down to the south side. So that's really on that sheet, that's really the biggest change you'll notice. Some of the other part of that toward the south is because, again, the landowners wanted us to parallel bridger pipelines and made some minor adjustments on that map. So
Okay, let's go to the second one.
Ask, I guess one question, just for a reference on map one, you know, what is it, give us a distance on one of these, between the two lines on one of these areas?
Maybe 200 feet. I would say the red and the black along the left side is maybe 150, 200 feet.
How wide's the corridor, remind me?
200.
Okay.
Of course, it's further. You're getting, you know, probably 500 or 600 feet when you're getting over along that widening line.
All right.
Just one question. So the red line is, am I to understand that's what was previously cited, and the black line overlaying in parts and distinct in other parts are the amendments or what's currently being proposed?
Yes, the red was what was submitted. The black shows what is the current proposed alignment.
Thank you.
Page map 2, just it's a couple of real minor ones there, you can hardly even see them, and just simply landowner requests. And what happened is, of course, as we went out there and we were working with landowners and kind of talking to them about the route, showing them a map, they had a pretty good idea where they thought it was going. But when we went out and started staking center line, things changed, and going, oh, wait a minute, you know, how about you move it over closer to this fence, or you know, get it away from my water tank or what have you. So that's what a number of these end up being, and so that's what this is, just a simple landowner request. On map 3, a couple things to highlight. The first one, you'll see that we kind of jog to the east there, probably a quarter mile or so. The landowner has a couple homes there that they wanted the pipeline to move further away from. So we said we can accommodate that, and so we moved it. Further north, you'll notice the Dunn, it gets up toward the Dunn, what we're calling the Dunn receipt point. In the original application, we had that pipeline going to the east toward Killdeer. That has now since been eliminated, and so that's why that red line is there, but that is not going to be constructed now. And so then we just have the Dunn receipt point, and you can see there is some minor changes there, and again, that's because as we're negotiating with the landowner on exactly where that receipt point is going to fall, as well as the pipeline coming in, there were some minor adjustments that need to be made there.
So none of the changes affect going on to a new landowner, if you will?
No.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, just a quick question, Mark, do we have to officially enter this into the record? I would.
It'll all have to be offered by the end, but we can do that at the end as one
Just
motion.
make sure we don't forget that.
Yeah, actually, the maps are already in as a result of the affidavit that was submitted with the documents, but I sure can offer it as well.
It's best, I think, our new tradition has been to offer
Okay.
them so that they become exhibits.
Just an inquiry, why did you decide to eliminate the route to Killdeer?
Is it okay if we take somebody out of order since
It's
it's?
fine. It's informal.
It's informal.
It's
All right.
informal.
Steve can answer that.
Yeah, we just decided to economize at this point and not build that truck receipt point out near Kildare. Kildare determined that we could still have the same level of interest without having to do that at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jamie, you want to go to the next map?
Yeah.
What number is that? Is that
4.
4, okay.
Yeah. Map 4, you'll notice the adjustments toward the bottom, again, were landowner requests. Same thing, they wanted us to move away from maybe a tree row or some other feature that, again, we were trying to be willing to accommodate those. Up toward the top, that landowner, as you guys all know, there's a lot of activity going on out there. What happened from the time that we started working with the landowner and established this initial route, Bear Paw came in and put in another pipeline. Landowner says, hey, I want you to go in parallel Bear Paw pipeline. Makes sense, we understand that, so that's what that adjustment is there.
How close can you get adjacent pipelines?
Depends on the easement. Typically,
How about
you
from
know,
engineering standards? I mean, what is that?
there really isn't. I mean, typically the rule of thumb is you don't want to get any closer than 20 feet, and it's not. It's mainly because you don't want, if you had a leak in one pipe, you don't want to, had a catastrophic failure, you don't want that to impact the other pipe. There isn't any engineering guideline that says that is 20 feet. Of course, it's dependent on the soil.
There's no
and-
codes on any of that?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can you put them in the same trench?
Yes, you could. And it's very common. A lot of companies are putting oil, gas, water in the same trench. So.
Okay, change 5.
Okay, on map 5, again, I'm moving north on each of these maps as we go. The first change there is fairly major change again. The landowners that own this property, and this is where we cross the Little Missouri River, and as we get closer to Watford City, of course, everybody has plans to develop their property. Excuse me, and so that's what happened here. When we first talked to the landowners, they were okay with the route. As things progressed, they decided that land maybe had some more value, and so they wanted us to move further to the east. And so that's what that adjustment is it moves it further along that,
Away from 85.
you know, this is where you drop off across Long X Bridge, across the Little Missouri. So this moves it further away from the Park Service as well, which is a benefit, obviously, and then gives us more of a straight shot off the bluff across the Little Missouri. Again, north, just a minor reroute again at the landowner request. And then the one up to the north side of there, you can see it, what had been submitted earlier. We had a couple of crossings of Highway 85. And that was to go around a landowner that basically did not want us to cross their property, didn't want us to provide an easement. And so we were trying to work with landowners to go across the highway. In the meantime, we were able to find a much better route and stay on the east side of 85. And so, you know, we obviously from an engineering standpoint, it's a lot more pipe in. We have a couple crossings, and it was much more preferred to stay where we are, as well as meeting the landowner's desires in that location.
So are you still avoiding that same landowner, or is he?
Yes, we're going to the east side instead of to the west side.
Okay.
Yeah, question on I'm pretty sure I can see where the river crossing is at, but it looks like to me that the adjusted route is a different river crossing. Am I reading the map incorrectly?
I was trying to figure out which is the river crossing too.
Well, it looks like to me
I
that
can't
the goal area at Roosevelt Park would be, river crossing would be just to the east of that. And you can kind of see the river, it's the river on the map is kind of faded.
You're crossing the river.
Yes, it
south
changed.
and east.
Yeah, you're correct, Commissioner. If you take that line, which is the township line, that's pretty close to where the river crossing was going to be. So the river crossing's adjusted to the east a little bit from where it was before.
Okay, then I guess that opens up some questions about the river crossing, because during the hearing, I remember a lot of discussion about the river crossing, about where the shut-off valves would be at and the different terrain coming in and out. I mean, is there some more detail that you could provide about the river crossing? Because it's got to be different. I mean, it's one thing moving at 200 feet in the field. It's another thing moving at, this looks to be more than 200 feet in a river crossing. If there's something that we should be aware of, any that
we can provide you the drawings really didn't change. We still have valves on both sides of the river. We're still boring the river, so it truly doesn't change anything other than physically the location of where it's at.
Jane, would those issues be addressed in the amendment to the wetlands and water crossings?
The route is on, yes, in the route and the discussion, both the cultural and the wetland, but you know, I honestly, if we provided, I don't know if I provide you another drawing, that it would look any different than what we already have. You know what I mean, in terms of the distance or the depth under the river.
I think you answered a lot of my questions, just to make sure that the equivalent type setbacks for shut-offs and
Yes.
the double wall piping, there's nothing that's different about this river crossing than there was the one that was originally testified to.
Correct.
It might even be a little gentle, more gentle area, as I recall.
Because before that was very steep, and I think we asked during the hearing, we said, why couldn't you go farther to the east? And the question was, well, we couldn't get landowner approval at that time. So this one, and Kevin's read the mark, it is probably less than.
Could you point out for me where that is on this map?
Right along here.
Oh, okay.
Right along, basically right along this township line is roughly where that river crossing is.
Oh, that's really, okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, that was all that.
Okay, let's go to map 6, Jane.
All right, map 6. Obviously, this is the largest change by far. As any of you know that have been up to Watford City in the last few months, it's crazy. When we had started this project, you know, a couple of years ago, this route seemed to be the most reasonable route. We quickly got caught up in all of the development. Matter of fact, we were out at one point staking the center line and found that it went through like the middle of a foundation of a house that was going up. So land was changing hands so quickly, the number of landowners was much higher. So we decided that there's no way that we're probably going to be able to make it through there using that original route. And so we decided to move further away from Watford City and all of that development, which is how we kind of came up with the route that is shown here.
So the straight east of Watford City, little green dot, that must be the golf course there in Watford City. I'm trying to get a feel for how far east of Watford City this is, that truck fuel spot east of town. I think we've moved this thing far enough east.
So there's a legend, Commissioner, it looks like half an inch, could be about half a mile.
But I mean, are you confident you've moved this far enough to the east and the south?
Yes, we are. And actually, we have 100% of the landowners along this alignment have signed easements.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that, you know, they might not have ideas later on to do something else, but our easement's in place. So
When would this construction here potentially be completed? This particular spot around Watford City? If everything goes well.
end of the year.
Okay. All right, so we're talking a relatively quick time.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, 7.
And these next two really, 7 and 8 are very similar. Again, what happened is it was a combination of a couple of things. One, some landowners that initially were receptive and then changed their mind and decided that they didn't want a pipeline on their land, and other landowners that didn't have a problem with it, but they own land on both sides of Highway 23 and preferred to go a little bit different location. So that's what the change that you see here is basically going around a landowner that had refusal and then adjusting with the remaining landowners. As you know, there's a kind of a domino effect. You got one that holds you out, and then you got to go back and adjust that alignment. So we had to go back to the landowners and get agreement on where they wanted that route adjusted to.
Map 8.
And map 8, same thing. A lot of these were the same landowners on both sides. Again, we had a person there that decided they did not want to provide an easement, so we needed to make some adjustments, and then that carried out to the landowners on either side, and then this is what was agreed upon.
So it's a fair statement, is it not, that all of the adjustments that you talked about that you're proposing to be approved by the commission today were made as a result of getting landowner approval or meeting landowner requests.
With the exception of the Watford City route because of the development, correct, yes.
Now, you probably heard in my introductory remarks the issue with respect to the fact that the order and the corridor certificate and the route permit were conditioned upon final SHPO approval.
Yes.
Can you discuss for us just very briefly what has been filed with the commission with respect to those issues?
As Lawrence mentioned before, what we got just on the 27th, we got two documents. One was the letter from the BLM, which they are because they're crossing federal land, the BLM is the lead agency for the environmental assessment, and therefore BLM needs to take the lead on the cultural as well. So BLM provided a review of all the cultural reports and analysis that was done. They gave their approval of those reports, provided those to the SHPO's office. The other document that has been provided has then been SHPO's concurrence and acceptance of that letter from BLM, which basically says that there are no historic properties affected.
I don't think I have any more questions for Mr. Todd. We'd offer the index map and map 1 through 8. And if there are other questions, we do have Steve Greiser with us, who's the president of Bach and Lincoln, and he can address those questions. Hopefully, he's going to answer the tough questions.
Okay, well, thank you for offering those exhibits. I don't have any particular questions.
You know, maybe just, Steve, since we have you, a little bit of an update on, because this has been a very long process, as you know better than we do. And what we're talking about today is just sort of the south of the reservoir portion. What's your intended capacity for that? Is that still 100,000 barrels per day?
Well, 12-inch pipeline, we're saying nominal capacity 65,000 barrels a day. You add the pump stations to it, which would be in the future, it'd be 100,000 barrels a day.
The reason I ask, I mean, I assume so, and the reason I ask it is, it just kind of gets back a little bit to my opening comments. I don't know if staff has anything, maybe before I say anything, I ask Pat, I mean, is there anything you're dying to ask, or is there anything you need clarification on?
I have a couple of questions.
Why don't you go ahead and ask those first, and then I'll make some.
I just had a couple of questions about the SHPO letter. I mean, I'm not sure I understand the timing. It looks like that there may have been some addendum filed with the SHPO. Is this an addendum that was filed with the SHPO? This?
Correct.
And then did they review that?
Correct.
And the letter that they confirmed that there are no impact, that letter covers all the addendums?
Correct. There's the regular report, addendum 1, addendum 2. All three of those are referenced in both the BLM's letter and the SHPO concurrence letter.
Very good. The corridor itself, now, for field studies, when we went back out to do the field studies on these reroutes, did you do a 200-foot field study corridor on those reroutes?
Yes, we did. And actually, even on the cultural, some of the cultural, we went ahead and did 500 feet because of what we were running into with adjustments that landowners wanted. We said we'd hate to keep going back. Let's just go ahead and widen that out. So several locations for cultural, we did 500. Wetland delineation, primarily, we stuck with 200.
Okay.
That's just because Steve Greiser started believing that every winter was going to be worse than the previous one, until this year finally get some work done.
I'm thinking the order just approves a 200-foot corridor along the route, the entire route, and if the new order said 200-foot corridor, would there be some areas where you'd want a wider corridor that you studied 500 feet?
Yes, we would prefer that.
I guess the best way, I think, to do it would be to have you file a map of the corridor that you are asking the commission to approve. Okay. Perhaps with when you file a proposed order.
Right. This is attached to the proposed order, right?
With the new route as well.
How would that be reflected in the order then, Pat? Will we be able to say 200-foot corridor except where the map indicates wider, or how would we?
Well, I would just reference the map.
The map as
in
the order.
order.
I think we did in the
Yeah,
Dakota one.
okay, yeah.
Good catch.
And then, well, you know, one of the, in the certification to order provisions, it says, you know, that you'll file a GIS of the approved corridor within 3 months after the order, but I don't know if you'd be able to file that right away, but you'd still have that 3 months to
And
file
I think we
GIS.
talked briefly about that yesterday, and we think that's been filed, hasn't it? Or
I would